So I'd now take great pleasure in introducing Brooke from Holroyd Council, who is doing innovative things in Australia. Welcome, Brooke.
Thank you. Hi. I should preface this speech by saying I have a fairly severe case of baby brain, and if at some point I appear to look like a stunned mullet, it's because something else has left my brain, and you can feel free to drag me off. My name's Brooke, and I work for Holroyd Council in Sydney. We're a fairly small local government area in the scheme of things in Sydney. We still have over 90,000 residents. We're surrounded by three other very large councils, so we're a little pocket in the middle. We're in Western Sydney. We're a very culturally diverse area. We have a lot of problems with animals not being microchipped. We put a lot of our problems down. We are a fairly low, I think, socioeconomic area, and so councils had to do a few things to try and get around that and help our community be more responsible pet owners. I studied resource and environmental management. I was employed as an environmental education officer with council, and when council nearly a decade ago decided to care about animals, I guess that's the best way to put it, they adopted quite a compassionate view. Took a few years to get going, but I, as the animal lover in the office, got the job. And it's now the part of my job that I well and truly care the most about. My education in animals began probably with my nana. I'm fairly convinced that in hindsight she was probably known as the crazy cat lady of Cabarita, which is another little area in Sydney. She never had a million cats or anything, she wasn't like that, but she always had cats, and she often had litters dumped on her door. And I remember her telling me she used to get so sick of it, she would basically kidnap the cats, go and get them desexed out of her own pocket, return them, and never tell the owners. And I guess I've drawn a bit of inspiration from that. I can't quite do that because I'm sure I'd get arrested these days, or certainly sued. But yeah, so that was, I guess, I've always said desexing's been my beef in life, and I've no doubt that it comes from her. In terms of training, though, it's all to do with the environment for me. So how did it all start? We adopted a low-kill policy. Pretty much came from the initiative of one of our elected councillors, and it was backed very strongly by our general manager and senior management team. We conducted some research into what some other councils were trying to do. We liaised with Blacktown Council. We send our impounded animals go to Blacktown Animal Holding Facility, which is run by Blacktown Council, and a few other councils also take their animals there. So we had to liaise with them, obviously, to get their support for what we were planning to do. And a no-kill policy, soon after changed to low-kill, was soon after adopted by council. I know yesterday there was discussions about trying to get local governments involved in programs, and I can say from my experience, certainly, the way that really it has to come from, you need to have the backing of a councillor or the general manager of the council. I'm very lucky that our GM is a huge animal lover. He never wants to come to the pound, but he loves animals. That's why he doesn't want to go to the pound. And certainly your elected representatives as well. Did I just hit that? Oh, yeah. That was just one of the articles from the time. It was in 2001. That was our mayor at the time. And I should say, at the time, it was initially introduced for dogs. And I've tried to, in more recent years, raise the profile of cats as part of the policy as well. But it was initially just for dogs. So that's a brief summary of that is the low-kill policy, actually. I also have never really loved the term. When I don't normally say we've got a low-kill policy, I normally tell people that I work for a council that has a compassionate view to animals, and with that has come some reduction in euthanasia, but also some other initiatives that we hope are just educating the community and will improve, obviously, or decrease the numbers of animals long term that we will be impounding. So in practice, like I guess Mitch has just been talking about, we do our best to return animals to their owners prior to them being impounded. So whether it's we just have to hold on to them a bit longer till an owner can get there or whatever we do. But that has certainly done quite a lot in terms of reducing our impounding. Once our dogs are impounded, there's an immediate hold placed on Holroyd dogs. Again, this has required the support of Blacktown Council. So in New South Wales, if they don't have a chip, dogs are legally required to be held for 7 days and 14 days if they do have a chip. But ours are held, I also don't like to say indefinitely because it sounds like we hold them there for a year at a time and with no regard for them what happens to them. Obviously, dogs that I see are staying there a little bit longer are monitored, and the staff at Blacktown keep us updated as well on how they're coping in the pound environment, while we're also advertising them and trying to get them homes. But they are held indefinitely, and for one of our dogs to be euthanased, it has to go through my boss, the pound staff email, and request permission for various reasons to euthanize an animal, and we have to agree to that. I've started holding some cats, so if I, because of constraints and the sheer volume, we're not able to hold all cats, but I will pick a few at a time and hold them, get them desexed and promote them. We update the website regularly. I go out at least once a fortnight and take photos and put them on the website. I do a pet of the week in the local paper every week, which works, surprisingly. I wasn't convinced at first that it would, but it does. I've been at the pound when a lady's come in with a gorgeous junior boy, the cat that I had developed strong feelings for, and she came in holding the newspaper. She wasn't even from our area, she worked in the area, she was from Hawkesbury, and I basically interviewed her on the spot, made sure she was suitable for this gorgeous boy, but I could have hugged her. I was so happy to see that it was actually working and people were taking them into the pound. We obviously do general promotion at council events and around the office to promote the Blacktown Animal Holding Facility as a place to adopt an animal. And yeah, I bother staff regularly around the office. I contact specific rescue groups if needed. If an animal's been there for a while, say a greyhound, I will try and contact the specific groups and basically beg for some assistance with getting that animal out. And I have more recently commenced promoting our animals on petrescue.com.au. I see there are some people here. Basically because, I mean, the ads that we put in the paper cost us money. I often think, you know, that $250, $300 could help me be desexing an animal instead. And the Pet Rescue is a free listing for council. And I'd almost rather use the money we use to put the ads in the paper to desex the animal and put them on Pet Rescue, because they have to be desexed to go on that website. But at the moment I can do both. This is just a few examples. That's one of our. We have a corporate page in our local paper every week, and so that's an example of the pets of the week. They get a pretty prominent spot in there, so they stand out quite a bit. That's an example of our office newsletter, which is distributed to all staff. Those 3 cats in those pictures were adopted by staff members. The kittens were our milk crate kittens. They were dumped out the front of council in a milk crate. I fostered them for a few weeks and had them desexed, and then they were rehomed. And that gorgeous boy, Donald, I actually fostered him too, and a staff member adopted him. So that's just reminding staff that we have this policy. If ever anyone they know is looking to adopt a pet, I always tell people I'm happy to be a dog or cat matchmaker. If they know what they're after, I can keep an eye out for it. So we keep those things going around. And I've also asked staff in that particular one if anyone's interested in helping me foster, and I got a few responses as well. This was just an example. I mentioned I'm trying to increase our cat adoption as well. There are some challenges with that, and these are just a few examples of ones that I have tried. The little ginger white boy, Goofy, I fostered him to sex. By the way, I foster one at a time. I have 2 little kids. I used to take a litter at a time before kids. But I'm a fairly realistic person, and I think if I can take one at a time, I'm at least doing something. I let my kids name them, so hence I've had Mickey, I've had Donald, I've had Goofy, I've had Daisy, we've gone through the Mickey Mouse gang, I've had Alvin, I've gone through the Chipmunks. So Goofy we fostered him. He was very sick with the flu, but we got him better, got him desexed, and he was rehomed via Pet Rescue to an awesome home in Gladesville. They just sent me a photo the other day, and he's looking gorgeous. The little boy on the little tabby and white was desexed, and we had him desexed at the pound. The Blacktown don't do mandatory desexing yet, so with the help of the staff, sometimes I have them sent off-site to be desexed, and sometimes the pound will desex them if there's room on their desexing program. And that little boy was desexed, and before I could even put him on Pet Rescue, he was rehomed, and I sometimes think the fact that he was desexed and ready to go helped him get a home. The black and white boy at the bottom, we fostered desexed, and he was rehomed via my office promotions. And the little girl, the gingery tabby, she was desexed. I had her desexed. She was rehomed from the pound, but via promotion on Pet Rescue. So I have been desexing some. I don't have to foster if they're in okay health. Sometimes they get the flu and then they have to be held in sick bay for a little while. But they have generally always come good, and because they've already been desexed, they're less likely to be euthanized. We get them through the antibiotics, and they are rehomed, or they have always been rehomed. And I think putting them on Pet Rescue has been really beneficial, not only just for these individual cats, but I think it also helps promote the pound as a place to go to get a pet. In practice, part 2 is just general education. We have an annual event which has now been going for about 8 years. It's on next Sunday. It's called Pet Fest. We do things at that event. People can bring their animals there. It's a really great community event. It's by far the best one that we have, and I'm not really biased, but compared to our City Fest and things like that, we get a few thousand people attending this event, and it's always very positive. We do scan and win, so trying to encourage people, they come along, we scan and check the details in their microchips. Invariably, there are corrections to be made, whether it's just a phone number or whatever, and then they go in the draw to win a prize. And we also offer payment of registrations on the day, which also draws people in. In the last year, I started the Happy Cat Desexing program, which everyone thought was a weird name, but Happy Cat, Happy Community was my sort of saying, because we get a lot of fairly aggro calls about cats in the community. And that basically worked on a voucher system. Council liaise with local vets, which I think is also important for local councils to do. For quite a long time, none of the vets were prepared to work with us, and even though we had approached them in the past. And a couple of years ago, a young guy took over one of the clinics in our area, and he's very open and really keen to work with council. So I immediately said to him, well, can you do a desexing program with us? He said, for sure. So we have just, at the moment, done that for cats, mainly because our dogs are going okay. Our cat euthanasia is still ridiculous, and I think that being proactive about that is probably the only way. Council contributed $50, the vets dropped their price $50, and the resident paid the remaining. We had 100 vouchers. We ended up giving away 110 over a 2 to 3 month period with repeated promotion. And the most interesting thing I found about that was that about 90 of the cats, or even more, the condition was they had to be chipped, because obviously we have to uphold the law. So about 90 did not have chips. So they were chipped as part of the program at a discounted rate. And that just highlighted really to me that people are not adopting cats necessarily from legitimate rescue or other avenues. They're getting them from Joe down the road who had a litter. Their family friend had a litter, and they hand them out. And I figure if I can stop some of those litters being born, maybe some of those potential owners will go to a legitimate rescue facility and adopt a cat in that way, which might help our adoption rates. So we're just promoting that again now for the second year in a row, and I hope for that to be a continuing thing. Even though at the end of the day, if anyone rings me, unlike Mitch, I'm a total sucker, softy, I cop it, you wouldn't believe. Very naive, I believe every story that people swing me on the phone. And you know what, I'd rather err on the side of believing them than not. And if someone asks for help, I'll give them a voucher at any time of the year. We do some schools, well, we've just done a schools education in conjunction with the RSPCA. They went into some of our local primary schools. I've run dog training classes, and the best thing that came out of that was a few people who attended had adopted a dog from the pound, and a couple actually said to me, oh, we've been thinking about sending it back because it wasn't very well behaved. Excuse me. And so, you know, we found that quite beneficial. We haven't run that this year because I didn't have the money this year, but we have done it in the past. We do an annual pet food drive at Christmas time where the donations go to local rescue groups who help us throughout the year by taking animals from the pound, because we are not deluded enough to think that our drop in euthanasia rates is just because of what we're doing. It's because the rescue groups are there and they are actively rescuing animals all year, and so that's one little thing that we can do to try and help them at one of their busiest times. And we take any media opportunities that we can. This is just some promotion for our Pet Fest event this year. We're trying a new kiddie corner because normally cats are a little bit overlooked at that event. So it's a gold coin donation, and a lot of the money raised all the money raised at Pet Fest goes towards what I do during the year with our education. We're also having a paparazzi this year, which is getting the younger kids in the community involved and getting them along to Pet Fest if they enter the competition, where hopefully again, they'll be able to learn some things about responsible pet ownership. That's just some photos. This is the promotion. It's probably being delivered this week, actually. This publication goes to every resident in our community. That's just the article. So I expect to be inundated with calls when I get back to work next week. Just council offers residents $50 to help desex their cat. And in the end, 2 vets came on board, so we can offer them 2. After all the residents $35 out of pocket for a boy cat and $80 out of pocket for a girl cat. Unless they needed a chip, then it was another $25. That's just a photo from one of our dog training classes. That's just a promotion little poster for our Christmas pet food drive, and that was the collection that we got last year, and that was one of the ladies who actively rescues from the pound with her dog, who was a Holroyd dog actually. She'd come to collect some of the food to help her. I don't want to look at the screen because I don't want to see how ridiculously large my head looks up there. But that actual, I shouldn't have put it in there, except that it's provided light relief because everyone in the office thinks I'm one of the hoons that the police are targeting. But these kittens were actually, this is just an example of media opportunities. I figure we should grab them while we can. These 2 kittens were actually put in a box and put up with someone's clean-up material. And because I'm in environmental and waste education, our animal stuff actually comes in under my boss, who's the waste management team leader. So it all sounds a bit funny, but so our depot guys rang us and said that this box of kittens, it actually got thrown into the truck. It had other rubbish on top of it. And they thought they heard something, so they stopped the compactor and went through everything, and sure enough, these 2 little kittens were in a box put out as waste. So obviously we took the opportunity, just remind the community it's not acceptable, you know. We would rather pick up those animals. I personally would rather pick them up and have them euthanized humanely than have them crushed in the back of a truck. And I think that's another reason why our cat impounding has gone up a lot, because we are one of the councils that will actually collect cats. And we just do little things at different times of the year in the paper as well, like if you think of adopting a pet, go to Blacktown. Is it working? When we first started, dogs 64% euthanasia, and we were impounding 774. In the last financial year, we only impounded 280, and 22 were euthanized. And most of those were restricted breed, or restricted aggressive or very sick. I'm not actually sure that there was one they're probably healthy, but temperament-wise was questionable, and all avenues to adopt them really hadn't gone very well, and they weren't coping well in the pound environment, so the decision was made to euthanase. So obviously our dog rate has, well, all our dog stats really have improved. Cats not so much. And it breaks my heart. I feel like you're busting your butt to do anything, to help. And I was feeling great. I'd had a few rehomed on pet rescue, and I'm going, this is working. And I still got the stats. I went 78%, and it could, get a bit demoralising. But I know it probably would have been 90, so I guess I just have to keep plodding along. Obviously our cat impounds have gone up a great deal, and still a lot are being euthanased. Difficulties, like everything, lack of funding. I'm lucky that I have a council that, however, does allocate a decent portion to animal control. Obviously holding animals longer at the pound is a drain on funding because, it used to be held 7 days, 14, whatever, we get the bill and it's paid. No one knows what the impound numbers are. No one has a face to those numbers. We don't do that anymore. If I'm called by rescue and they say this number, what's happening with it, I know the dog or a cat they're talking about usually, and we can talk about it. And I think that's one thing I don't think a lot of councils could say, and I think that's a big start. If people just put a face to some of those numbers, then maybe they might start trying to do something. Contact details not being up to date, similar dogs impounded regularly, Staffy Cross is probably the main one. There's not probably as many people that want to adopt a Staffy Cross, but we get so many cats. Cat flu and other illnesses, as I said, that really does hamper the ability to rehome cats, especially. And not enough homes, how long can they be held? And again, either they're not coming to Blacktown Pound or, but we can't hold dogs indefinitely. We need to make a decision at some point on how long we can hold them. What next? I've had what my boss calls some fairly harebrained ideas, but my GM on the side said if I come up with something, just go to him and he'll try and find me the money. So, I've got a few. We've recently actually just put the Pet of the Week logo on our council's homepage, and apparently that's increased the visits to that site dramatically. It's now one of the most hit pages on our website. I'd like to do a larger community desexing program, including dogs. Desexing program from the pound, which I've indirectly done a few times, and sorry Jared and Ian up the back of it, I'm just working on some final things, but I'll probably be going to Blacktown soon with an idea for that. I've probably done some dodgy things. We had a couple of dogs released. This was an example. A girl was struggling to pay. She couldn't pay the impound fees. And if an animal's not desexed when they're released from the pound, they have to pay the rego. So for an undesexed animal, it's $150. So with impound fees for two, they were big dogs. Can't remember the breed actually, but they were really big dogs. And they were only 6 months old. It was well over $500. I said, I can't afford it. And I said, well... And then she said, my dad might be able to help me. I said, well, what if we get them released to you without you paying any impound fees, but we take you to the vet and we get the dogs desexed instead? I would rather see her she's going to borrow the money from her dad anyway, use the $300 she would have paid in regos. I said, I can get your dogs desexed for that. And I would rather see you do that so that money's actually going to something rather than to just, the government, I suppose. That's me. But at the end of the day, the best outcome is for the funds to go towards desexing those dogs instead of just because she then would not have been able to afford to desex them. And it worked, and that was the first one I tried, and I said, if you don't come through for me, I won't be able to offer this ever again, and she came through. But we made the appointments for her, we rang her, the vet rang her, you're coming in this date, yeah, and it all was fine. So I'd like to have a more formal program to make things like that happen. I'd like an adopt a stray, the desexing program. Most of the people that call me, they are feeding a stray, and they're the people that we're getting. A lot of them in Department of Housing, a lot of them are struggling. Again, I'm a sucker, so maybe they're telling, I don't know if they're lying to me, but I believe them. But I'd like it to actually have an adopt a stray for the people that are feeding, and a Little Pals adoption program, which for me was fairly, might be harebrained to try and rehome the adult cats from the pound to retirement villages and nursing homes, but provide a support for them. So council arranges for a vet for them that they can go to when they need help with the cat. Foster care program I've just advertised for because I need some help, liaising with the new local pet shop. If I can get a litter of kittens into foster care and the pet shop has said that they will take them desexed, obviously I'll desex them first. I wouldn't mind trying an adoption drive and a confronting education campaign. That's our Pet of the Week logo on the front of our website. That's my little ad again going out this week for Foster Care is Needed, with Goofy featuring again there. So hopefully I get a lot of calls, and from there I'll figure out what I'm going to do. But it's pretty much an expression of interest. This is a bit of another... I think when we were at the summit in Sydney, we were saying I feel like I'm sick of hiding it from the community, and I'd like to do something fairly confronting. My sister actually did this. She's into design, and I just sent her a photo of Goofy, and she mocked it up for me, but it's something I'd like to put to my boss. It's not perfect yet, but it was more the idea. I'd like to do a series of different animals that have been euthanased. I want them to know how old they were. I want them to know when they were born. I want them to know when they died. And I would like to run that concurrently with a program promoting the pound, a really positive program promoting the pound, so that there's that sort of, I don't know, but I don't know if the bosses will go for it, but that's my idea I'd like to do. And finally, we couldn't do what we do without the staff at the Blacktown Animal Holding Facility. They really are supportive, and if those of you from Sydney, I don't even know if it's beyond Sydney, Blacktown cops a bit of flack. And changes are happening, which is great, and we really couldn't do it without the staff there and the volunteers from the local rescue groups. It goes without saying that we owe them a great deal. That's the end.
That was really inspirational, Brooke, and thank goodness there's people like you working in councils. That's all I can say.